Good morning, everyone. Oh, wow. Wow. Oh, dear, this is going to be hard. Right, let's try that again. Good morning. Oh, that's a bit better, yeah. You've got to make me feel good, like I'm a retired guy, right? First of all, I want to thank NAMES for inviting me to come and talk and for allowing us to include safety as a key part of this presentation this morning. I was saying to Patrick from Carney this morning that in all the years that I've had the good fortune to present at events like this, I've never actually been asked to talk about safety. And when we were planning this out, just before I announced my retirement, we agreed that this would be a great chance to talk a bit about two things that are really near and dear to my heart: safety and productivity. And so my mission today is to leave you with some thoughts, right, from my experience over the last little while at 3M, at Tire Hub, which I ran, at Mattel, at Starbucks, and at ICI. I spent 20 years in the chemical industry, and that was my grounding in how you run a truly safe and world-class operation. And we've got some of my former colleagues here, Jason and Dan from 3M. Sylvia's here. We worked together a couple of times. Patrick's here. People I've known quite a while who've all been part of that journey as we drove improvement, not just in productivity, but starting with driving improvement in safety. So how many people here have spent time in a factory? That's great. That's wonderful. My first experience in a factory was when I was 18 years old. 18 years old back in, well, it was just after the start of the Industrial Revolution, actually. That's when I started, right? I'll say it now before someone else says it. And I remember at 18 walking into this factory, and I've never had so much money in my pocket as I did then. 12-hour shifts Monday to Friday, 6 hours on a Saturday, 8 hours on a Sunday. It's a brand new factory. It's the only factory left in my hometown. It's the only factory left in my hometown. And you go in there as an 18-year-old, you don't know anything. You meet these amazing colleagues and workers, supervisors, managers. And the thing that sticks in my mind from that experience was my colleague, who were both 18 years old. His name was George. And George manages to get himself trapped between the wall and the walking truck that he had to move things around the plant. And I still remember George doing this dumb thing at 18 years old, and it wasn't a huge, terrible injury, but it was painful. And I remember the response in this factory that I was in. There was no response. It was just somebody got hurt. Someone got hurt. George got hurt, knee got hurt, he was off for a week. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. All of us here, we know as manufacturing people that at 2 o'clock this morning, in one of your factories or in one of your distribution centers, there was a guy called Bob or a lady called Jean, and there was a moment at 2 o'clock in the morning where they had to make a decision. Do I do this safely or do I not? And we were all fast asleep. At least I hope we were all fast asleep in our beds, in our rooms. And we weren't there. And that person who we rely on the factory floor or on the floor of the distribution center, they're on their own making a split-second decision which can be the difference between them going home safe and sound and them not. And the challenge for us is, how do we create an environment where there is a fabulous safety, where people are genuinely looked after, while also delivering the kind of productivity that we are asked to deliver every single year. And what I want to do today is just share with you some thoughts around that. And I've had two passions in my career, absolutely two passions: safety, productivity. Why safety? I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. But I was fortunate to grow up in the chemical industry in a company that had world-class safety, and you were actually, when you walked into one of our factories, your life expectancy went up. When you walked into one of our massive high-hazard chemical plants, your life expectancy increased. You were safer in our factory than you were walking down the main street of your local town. And I was lucky to be raised in that environment. And then productivity, and we've all lived this, no matter how good we are at making things, no matter how good we are at manufacturing and engineering, our businesses rely on us getting better, delivering more output per person, more output per hour, because that's what drives the productivity of our company and their results. So those two things are deeply personal to me, and I've been fortunate to run factories all around the world. At 3M, we've got Jason and Dan there. We have 43,000 people across the world in our factories and distribution centers. And when you've got 110 factories and 88 distribution centers, there's something going on the whole time. And while we were under tremendous pressure at 3M to revolutionize our productivity, we also were under great pressure to do it in a way that kept our people safe and allowed them to go home safe and sound every day. And that's the conundrum we all face. We're driving for results, but we need to do it in a manner that keeps people safe. Now, I'm going to tell you a little story. This is not a sentimental story, right? I never met my grandparents. Working class people in Scotland died young. I never met my grandparents. That's my grandfather, Matthew. 27 years old, comes back from the First World War, has 2 kids, Jimmy and Danny, works in a mine, a coal mine, and at age 27, the coal cutting machine comes off the face of the coal and chews up his legs. Crippled at 27 years old. Crippled at 27. Never met Matthew, right? He lived till he was about 60. He died shortly before I was born. And so when I tell you that story, it's not for sympathy or being sentimental. It's that Matthew had a choice then at that point about what kind of life his sons would lead. And the reason my dad got to university is because Matthew said, no son of mine is going down a mine. And you could say this has got a kind of happy ending because Jimmy, my dad, went to university, my mum Angela, they were both first generation university, had 8 children, and we all got to go to university and school. And so you could say, what a tremendous story. The arc of fate changed in a positive way. But it shouldn't rely on somebody having their legs chewed up in a coal cutting machine, should it? Right? People need choices. We shouldn't be forcing choices on them why bad things happen. And in my book, there are 2 reasons why we all care about safety. The first one is obvious. We care about people, right? None of us wants to see someone get hurt. But that on its own doesn't create a safe environment. What creates a safe environment is that we do something which is not normal in our everyday life. We create a controlled environment, and by creating this controlled environment, we deliver fantastic safety performance. Now, what do I mean by that? So I'll be getting an Uber this afternoon to go back to the airport. I'll go down to the front of the hotel. Let's say the Uber parks at the opposite side of the road. If I walk across the road without looking both ways and I get hit by a car, you're going to say, well, that was a stupid thing to do, right? Peter should have known better. Like, he knows don't cross the road without looking. And so in our day-to-day life, we tend to think of people are responsible for their own safety. The difference when we get to one of our factories and we create a world-class environment is that we are responsible. And we're trying to do something which is unnatural in our day-to-day lives. As the manufacturing leadership, we're building a controlled environment so that we know what will happen, and that's how we stop people getting hurt. So of course we care, right? It starts with caring. But there's not a single manufacturing person in the world who's going to say, I don't care. So it's got to be something more than that. It's got to be we're trying to build, or we're building this controlled environment where we know exactly what's going to happen because we've created an environment and a set of behaviors and expectations that are not natural in everyday life. And that drives amazing safety performance. And that then creates a platform for productivity. You're building on top of this environment and this control that you've created. Now, when bad things happen, there's three things you find. When something bad happens in one of your factories and someone gets hurt, you will find three things every time. You'll find three things. First one is someone didn't follow procedure. When something serious happens, I can almost guarantee you'll find that there was something written down and someone chose not to follow it. That's number one. Number two, somebody knew. Somebody knew that we weren't always following procedure. The supervisor, the other person on the line, the person on the line next to it, the maintenance guy who's friends with the person running the line. So someone didn't follow procedure, and at least one other person knew that we weren't doing things by the book. And then the third thing you'll find is that when something bad happens, it just needed one thing to go right, and it wouldn't happen. There might be 3 or 4 things that went wrong. You just need one of them to go right. Just need one. Why am I telling you all that? Because somewhere, right, in our organizations, there's Peter, former group president at 3M, let's say, and then you've got an SVP, and then you've got Dan, right? Dan Carlson, the VP. Then you've got a director, then you've got a plant manager like Jason, and then you've got an operations manager, and then you've got a supervisor, and then there's Gene on night shift or Bill on afternoon shift. And you've got this whole pyramid, right? This pyramid of Peter, and then you've got this whole thing down to the floor. And the question is, at 2 o'clock in the morning, how do we make sure that the person on the line, on the floor, is doing what we want them to do right at the top? You've got 43,000 people in 3M, and it called pyramid all the way up to me. How do we make someone on the line at 2 o'clock in the morning do things the way we want? That is the heart of driving world-class safety. Now let's just talk, we'll come back to that in just a second. Let's just talk about productivity, why it really matters. We all know this, right? All of you are under pressure every day to deliver more with less, right? Yeah, I was joking about the Industrial Revolution, but that's what's driven manufacturing since the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. Productivity. How do we automate, right? How do we reduce defect rates? How do we reduce waste? How do we get more output per hour? How many people have taken the elevator in the hotel? Put your hands up if you've used the elevator in the last, right? Okay, good, good. How many of the times you used the elevator was there somebody in the elevator operating the elevator for you? Did you all operate it yourselves? Wow. 110 years ago in America, there were 15,000 elevator operators, people who were paid to close the gates, right? Pull the switch, press the floor. Automation. It's been around us the whole time. Defect rates. We all remember the days, and maybe you don't. I remember the days where, you know, a defect rate of 1 in 100 was considered really good. 1 in 100 nowadays, right, we're all out of business. You think about the attention to quality that we have now. You look at the output per hour, how you measure the output per hour. When I was at ICI Paints, we increased the output per person 8% a year, every year for 8 years. Output per person per year went up 8% every year for 8 years. Right? Eye-watering levels of productivity. And you're under this pressure all the time. At 3M, Dan, Jason, myself, under this pressure all the time. How do we make 3M a productivity machine? Right? How do we drive more for less? How do we drive automation? How do we reduce defects? How do we take out waste? How do we get more output per hour? And somewhere, you'll be in a conversation, sometime this year, you'll be in a conversation where someone will suggest to you there's a trade-off between safety and productivity. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. You're going to be in a room, and someone's going to say, yeah, but productivity comes first. Oh, right? And you've got to think about that and say, no, that's not what we're about. What we're about is creating this controlled environment that drives fabulous safety, looks after our people, and creates this different kind of environment. And on top of that environment, we then drive productivity because we know what's happening in our factories and we're in control of it and we're in control of the people and they know what we're doing. So productivity matters. And there are plenty of people who will tell you that if you have great productivity, you'll have great safety. It's not true. It's the other way around. It's the other way around. You want great productivity, you start by having world-class safety. You drive safety, you drive control, you drive an environment where you know how people are going to behave. You do that, you build a platform for productivity. No, so why is that? Why does having fantastic safety create a platform for productivity? There's some reasons there. You can't cut corners. If you're really serious about safety, you can't cut corners. Right? So you create a mindset. People think, all right, okay, we don't do that. We don't cut corners. We do things the right way. You cement the concept of standards. This is how we do things. This is how we run this plant. This is how we run this machine. This is how you behave in our factory. You stop all the discussion about trade-offs. It's not trade-offs. You don't trade off one for the other. You use one to get good at the next. You use your EHS platform to drive world-class productivity. You build a culture of transparency where we can talk about things, where someone can put their hand up and say, oh, this isn't right. This isn't right. There's a better way of doing this. And you engage people. Now, as you read all these, right, you think, you know, if that's how you drive safety, it sounds an awful lot like how you drive productivity, doesn't it? If you want to drive productivity, you want people that are engaged, you want people that speak up, you want people that are committed, you want people who are used to doing things the right way, doing standard work. You want people who can make improvement suggestions. You want people who are actively engaged in what's happening. And so these two things mesh together. The approach we take to drive a controlled environment delivers the platform for you to drive productivity. So the heart of what I want you to take away from today is actually on this page. Because, you know, everywhere I've been in my career, and we've improved, you know, safety results by, at Starbucks it was 75%, at Mattel it was something like 65%, at Sylvia, at Tire Hub cut the injury rate by 50% in 2 years, 3 years. You know, last year, Dan and Jason, I think it was 35% we cut recordables last year. Quarter one is down by another 10 or 15% already at 3M. But everywhere I've been and we've improved, we were already doing the stuff on the left-hand side of this page. The stuff on the left was in place. Audits, got to do audits, nothing wrong with that. Different programs, different initiatives, a lot of communication about what we're trying to do, database with all the results, you know, fabulous databases of everything that's happened, procedures, people writing things, writing SOPs, writing procedures, big databases of these things. They were all there. Every place I've worked in the last 200 years, that was already there. How we improved was on the right-hand side of the page. How we improved was on the right-hand side. And it's not that the stuff on the left is wrong or bad. I'm absolutely not saying that. Stuff on the left you have to have. You have to have that on the left. If you were to ask Dan and Jason what they've done differently in the last 3 years at 3M while driving eye-watering levels of productivity, what they've done is things that touch people on the floor. When someone walks into a 3M factory now, they're going to be getting conditioned from the minute they walk through the gate that they're walking into a factory. It's an industrial environment, therefore it's hazardous, and you have to think and behave differently, and that starts at the top. So every serious incident at 3M, every serious incident in a factory would be reported all the way up the chain to me within 24 hours. Within 24 hours, there'd be an email on my desk, on my PC, telling me what happened, where it happened, what time, and what the outcome was. Within 24 hours, guaranteed. Every factory, every distribution center. That gets people's attention. People start to think differently, right? When they know that everyone up the line is going to know within 24 hours what happened. And you might think, gosh, that might make people a little bit defensive. It does a little bit at first, but then you realize everyone's doing it. Everyone's reporting, and it's all so that we can understand what happened, why it happened, and what we're going to do differently. Every site leader, 5 days of training on what we are trying to achieve in EHS. Floor walks, training people how to walk the floor in a factory. How many people here have been trained how to walk the floor in a factory? Really? Really trained how to do a floor walk? It's surprising. Everybody thinks they can do a floor walk, but can you see what's really happening? Do people talk to you? Do people explain what needs to change? Can you see hazards? Can you see things that need to be changed and improved? We train all of our site leaders intensely on what a true floor walk is. Tomorrow's Thursday. I won't be there because I'm retired. Tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m., there'll be a senior meeting with 8 senior vice presidents plus the EHS team, and they will review everything that happened last week. Everyone will know what happened last week across 110 factories, 88 distribution centers, 43,000 people. Incident investigations. World class takes 10 working days, world class, to do an incident investigation and sign it off. That's world class. 10 working days to do an incident investigation. Doesn't take an hour, doesn't take a day. World class, it takes 10 days to do one and get it signed off up the chain. And then campaigns. Now, this isn't a whole list on the right-hand side, but the whole point of the right-hand side is to make sure that at 2 o'clock in the morning, Bill or Jean, when that moment comes, do I do things the right way or do I take a shortcut? Do I put my hand in the machine to clean it or do I just stand back and switch it off? Do I stop the machine and go tell the supervisor there's something not right? Do I see someone not doing something right and go across, put my arm on their shoulder and say, hey, you shouldn't be doing that. Let's just pause for a second. Everything on the right-hand side is about creating an environment where we are emotionally touching people and helping them calibrate and think differently in real time. We're trying to change the way people think and feel and consider what their job is, so that when that split second happens and you're tempted to put your hand in the machine, you go, you know what? I know for a fact that nobody in this company wants me to do that. And that split second, what goes through the person's brain is, nobody actually wants me to do that, so I'm not doing it. Because the reason people stick their hand in the machine when they shouldn't is because somewhere in their head, something's going on that makes them think, you know what? It's fine to do this. And it's not that they think, oh, I know Peter wants me to do that. It's not that. It's that somewhere the messages have got sufficiently muddled that when that thing happens, it seems logical in their head to say, I'm going to stick my hand in this machine. And what we're all trying to do, right, all of us trying to do, is we're trying to do so many things that will actually emotionally impact, change, adjust, temper the way someone thinks so that they know, right, in the minute it's going to happen, the second it's going to happen, bing, not doing that. Nobody wants me to do it. Nobody wants me to do it. And so what I'd say to you is, if you take anything from this little time together, is all the stuff on the left-hand side of this chart, everyone does something like it. Stuff on the right-hand side, and it'll be different for you and your company, how you want to do it. Ask yourself, Are we doing things that in real time are changing the way the entire layers of the organization operate? And is it getting to Gene or Bill at 2 o'clock in the morning, at night, on night shift, running a forklift truck in a DC, running a packaging line, running a maker, so that they are building up this muscle memory, brain memory that says, you know what? I'm not doing that. I want to do this the right way. And what I like to tell people is that we're only looking for 3 things from people, from our floor employees, right? And I'm not saying this is brilliant or perfect or right. You might have a list of 4 or 5 or whatever. I think there's 3 things. And I look back all the way to all the factories I've run around the world. I look back to when I was 18 years old, walking onto a factory floor for the first time. I think about all the conversations I've had with thousands of people over the years. 3 things that I need, and I think you need, from the folks on the floor in your plants and distribution centers, in your laboratories, in your pilot plants. Number 1, let's do it the way it's written down. Let's do it the way it's written down. If we have a procedure, just adhere to the procedure. Daniel mentioned, the Toyota way, standard work. We could call it standard work. Number 1, do the standard work. Do it the way we've all agreed it should be done. There's not a lot to ask someone. But I bet all of you, if we went around the room, every one of you could tell me a story of someone in your plants or distribution centers doing something really crazy. Didn't do it by the procedure, right? So let's do it by the procedure. Number 2, how can we do it better? Second thing I want from everybody on the floor is tell me how we can do it better. Tell me, because you do this every day, how we can do this better. I can see Sylvia there, right? Sylvia runs all these potato frying plants across the world. Is that right, Sylvia? Yeah, huge, huge things. Hazardous place, yeah? Hazardous process. How long have you been in that role, Sylvia? A year? 8 months, right? So that all the people in those plants, and Sylvia told me this last night over dinner, they know so much more about how those processes run than Sylvia can know after 8 months. So it's not a bad thing to ask people, how can we do it better? Because the people there on the plant probably know all these different ideas how to do it better. And then the third thing I'm looking for is a willingness to speak up when things are not right. Will someone put their hand up? And again, let's go back to Bill and Gene on night shift. Who do they tell? If you're working permanent night shifts and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, who do you talk to? If there's a better way of doing something, or something's not been done right, or the machine needs some help, who do you tell? Well, the night shift supervisor. Well, what's the last thing they want to do at 6 o'clock in the morning when the night shift finishes? It's to stay behind and start tracking someone down and tell them what they found. So how do we build mechanisms to make all 3 of these things work? How do we build a mechanism to make sure we do things by the book? How do we find ways of getting input on how to make things better? And to make all of that happen, how do we create a transparent, open environment that people will speak up? And I know that you're working on all these 3 things, but if we can get these 3 things right, if you can get these 3 things right with your employees, let's do it by the procedure. Let's get better, talk about how to get better, and create an environment where people speak up. And then how does that then feed into productivity? Because if you want to make your factory better, we've got to know that people are doing their standard work. We've got to know how could we do it better. And to do that, we've got to have an environment where people can speak up. So you drive this on the basis of safety, and you get the dividend being paid out in productivity. Because productivity is about engineering, it's about technology, it's about innovation, it's about people. Right? Productivity comes from people constantly thinking about how can we do something better. And I want to leave you with a little challenge, because we're all in different industries. Someone asked me recently, a board member asked me recently at 3M, define automation, Peter. I said, automation is when a machine runs uninterrupted, unattended, right, without human intervention, without stoppages, without interruptions, and without breakdowns and defects. for 2 hours. And the board member went, well, what do you mean 2 hours? I said, well, you know, it's not a bad number to start with. If I was running an oil refinery, right, or a big chemical process, I'd be talking in days. But I just ask you the question, when you're talking about productivity, what is the number in your head when you go back to your factories and you look at a process? What is your expectation for it to run unattended, without interruptions, without breakdowns, without defects? How long will it run without something happening? I flew in from Atlanta yesterday. The engines ran for 2.5 hours without any stoppages. Yeah, it's a good thing, right? And I was going to go up to the cabin, you know, the front cabin and the cockpit and ask the pilot, you know, how often do the engines stop, right? But think about it. Think of the expectation we have when we get on a plane. When you fly out of here, you expect those 2 General Electric or Rolls-Royce engines to just run without interruption, without intervention, right? Without manual intervention, without defects. You expect them just to run, don't you? Yep. Run perfectly. Then we go back to our factories and we see a labeling machine and it stops every 20 minutes because the label jams in it. So ask yourself, as we're thinking through all this, just ask yourself, what would be a great X for you, for your plants, and what would real productivity be in your plants? So let me just finish off, and I appreciate your attention and giving me the chance to talk about all of this, but there's 3 things I think. I think the model really comes down to whether we're driving EHS or we're driving productivity. There's 3 things that we're counting on. Leadership, being led by the leaders. We've got clear standards, and we've got engaged employees. 3 things. In that order. We don't have any right to expect engagement from our employees unless we're setting clear standards, and no one will trust our standards if they don't see us walking the plant as leaders engaged and making sure that people see that we own it, we're accountable. Accountable leaders, clear standards, and then go out and engage the heck out of your people, and you'll get fantastic results. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for allowing me to come and speak with you today.
We have time for at least one, maybe a couple of questions. Peter, one comment.
Yeah.
You said you were not going to talk with emotion. Can you feel his commitment and understand it? You know, it just oozes out of you.
Thank you.
And great presentation on safety, so thank you. Questions for Peter? Well.
Okay, there's one gentleman over there.
So this is interesting, seeing the right hand, left side, conversation here. Coming from your role top down, I don't know how much easier it would be, but in our facility, we have a single site manager for our safety, and he's trying to push the right-hand side. What would you say would be the biggest bang for your buck for him to really start with, because it's a team of 1 for him? So, from that list you had on the right side, where would his attack be to say, I'm going to go after this quarter, this half, to really make a difference?
That's a great question. I think 2 things. One, you need a bigger army, right? So having the leader truly committed, you've got to start with that. That person needs 2 or 3 or 4 allies. It could be a supervisor, it could be a maintenance person, it could be somebody on the floor, but have 2 or 3 more people who you can talk to and make sure you're building just a bigger circle of people who are talking about the same thing. Number 2 is make sure that every conversation that takes place with that leader, without exhausting them, make sure that he starts with safety and people begin to talk about, our leader talks about this, believes in it, and then just pick a subject. It could be holding the handrail, it could be lockout, tag out, it could be slip, strips, and falls. Pick one thing and just say, you know what, folks? We're going to dominate this in the next 3 or 4 months. We're going to get really good at this. But it can't just be one person saying it, because that's exhausting. He or she needs a handful of people, right? Just a few people of whatever level or whatever roles that are part of that conversation and helping spread that message. But find something simple, straightforward, dominate it, and use that to create credibility around the message that he or she cares, but that everyone's part of it, and we're going to go on this journey together.
One more question? Any more questions? Peter, one for you I will ask. Are there any principles that you've adopted and you've just used for the whole program through your whole career?
The key, yes, absolutely. The most important principle for me in a factory is transparency, is people speaking up.
Yeah.
And it's tough when you're a site manager. You know, it's a tough job, and at times you've got to be the bad guy, right? Things happen in plants and things take place. But you also have to have this side of you where people truly believe that you want to hear the news, you want to know what's really happening, and that you care, and you find these opportunities to show that you truly care, that this is important, and it's non-negotiable. This is how we're going to do things.
Okay, great. You know, I've studied DuPont for a long, long time, and DuPont for over 20 years was under 0.5 TIR. You know, so the results was fantastic. You know, they were bought by Dow Chemicals. Do you know who is the best I can find in the world right now? Dow Chemicals. They're 0.15.
Yep.
They're 1/3 of what DuPont had been. So combining the two companies, adopting DuPont's, you know, commitment and approach, it cut their results amazing. You know, it really shows what committed leadership does, not just a single plant, to the whole company.
That's right.
Yeah. So as far as I know, if you want to go learn from somebody, Dow's 0.15. Why do I know that? Mondelez was 0.16. I was chasing them instead of DuPont, you know, Dow as you went forward. Great presentation,
Thank you. All right.
Peter.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.